it was just so awesome to be back in that position, to be back on stage, speaking to an audience again that, is interested in the art that you're creating and performing. That's something that, you never forget the feeling. You just forget what it feels like. I don't know if that makes sense, but, to be in that position again, we were all just kind of like, wow, this is something just super special.
Cliff, welcome back is maybe the best way for me to start this conversation. You've been sort of back for some years, but not really. How do you feel about this whole thing? Like, where are you at?
It's still all settling in, and I think we're as a band, we're still processing everything.
Right.
It's just been an incredible experience. One we're just so thankful for. So far it's been wonderful. We anticipated to, continue in the same vein, but it's been awesome, just surreal. And we're, our hearts are filled with gratitude. We're just super happy to be in this conversation, and I'm super happy to be here with you, my friend.
Awesome. Well, thank you. So Dry Kill Logic is properly back now. We've missed you for a long time. You came back, briefly. We'll go into that in just a second and everything that's happening in the future. But obviously, you metaphorically just walked off of stage and welcome to Rockville, which was, I'm sure, an interesting experience for the band. First show in way too long, and then you play a show like that. How was it?
It was hot. The overarching memory that I have was it was incredibly hot. It was surreal. We've never played on a stage that big before. We've never played to an audience of that size before. And there was no warm-up show. There was no sneak on stage with somebody else and get our feet wet. We kind of just went for it. And, in some ways it was very much the same as a Dry Kill show 20 years ago. And in most ways it was invariably different.
Right.
But the whole experience was, it was just so awesome to be back in that position, to be back on stage, speaking to an audience again that, is interested in the art that you're creating and performing. That's something that, you never forget the feeling. You just forget what it feels like. I don't know if that makes sense, but, to be in that position again, we were all just kind of like, wow, this is something just super special. It was great.
You say a couple of things I want, go deeper into, and maybe this is the first thing, like you said, like, we didn't do any warm-up shows. There wasn't like a club tour to get us, back going. Is that is one of the reasons for that? So you wouldn't have a chance to second guess while you're doing this? Like, was there a voice in the back of your head that you had to suppress that was telling you, like, this can backfire, this is not a great idea, or what the fuck are we doing? Is that part of it? This must have been, as amazing and I'm sure overwhelming that it must have also been pretty scary, like, living up to it.
It's when the opportunity, came to us and the folks at Wimmer, Danny Wimmer Presents, were gracious enough to say, hey, would you like to come back and, play again and celebrate an anniversary? Your first kind of response is like, how are we going to do that? And then immediately following it in a much louder voice is, how could you possibly not do that?
Right.
So then begins the conversation of, you have 7 months to kind of figure this out. And what I found, again, I can only kind of speak for myself, but I think collectively as a group, we also experienced, you have that kind of nervous energy, not the kind that gives you an anxiety attack, but the kind that makes you really excited for something and you understand how important this is and you take it that seriously. It's been a long time since I've felt that way, about something as personal as being in a band and having that kind of opportunity presented. I mean, the last parallel I can think of would have been when somebody said, "Hey, do you want to go on tour with Megadeth and Gigantor?" I mean, you get these and you're like, and then you have to, everything goes into it. So I would say that, we were never scared or nervous or saying, "Oh man, maybe we're not going to do this." I think if anything, it was just that nervous energy of like, wow, oh my gosh, this thing is happening. And because it started so long ago, 7 months, about when we found out, probably last November-ish, maybe late October, exactly remember the date. But everything at that point, you're kind of sitting back and reflecting on what that's going to be like. So you, at least me, I could kind of disassociate from it and be like, it's months away. That's months away. Plenty of time. So you don't get too far ahead of the anxiety of, oh my God, I'm not ready. It's like, let me just concentrate on what I can concentrate on now. Let me, make sure that my performances are good, that I remember these lyrics, that I can go out and represent myself and the music and the group the same way we did then. And that becomes your focus. And that's what I could control. So I focused on that. And then, the day of the show, it's like, well, you can't leave now. I don't even have the keys to the van. So I can't go anywhere. So, at the end of it all, you're just the nervous energy that carries you through the whole experience.
Yeah, I hope you also can remember stuff. Because when I talk to granted, often younger bands that play a stage like that, or a European festival, play Grasshopper or Wacken for the first time, most of them tell me, I don't remember a single thing. I was in the zone, and it's only a few days later that I started to realize what happened. But
it does move fast. That is an accurate statement. It moves really quick, and before you know it, it's over. And there's so much other stimulus that you can't even really spend a minute to think about it, because you're kind of just moved to the next thing. But a few days later, when you reflect on it, you start to see content, you start to be sent pictures, and it's like, oh my gosh, and then. Yeah, that
actually happened.
That's pretty accurate, I would say.
A question I wanted to ask you, and I apologize in advance if people have asked you this before, but I just don't know what the answer to that is. But I mean, I know that obviously for a number of reasons, in the very, very early days, you guys changed the name of the band from Hinge AD, Draculagic. But a name of a band is also it's super important to building the identity, especially in those formative years. If you look back now, I mean, you're a band that has always evolved, and we'll get back to that in just a second. The changing the name itself, did that re-influence or re-accelerate an evolution of the sound when you did that, or was that never really anything that played a part in that?
It's an interesting question. If it did kind of solidify the identity of the band, it wasn't necessarily intentional. Necessity is the mother of it. And when you sign an agreement of any kind with anybody, generally the last paragraph in that agreement says something to the effect of, I hereby certify that everything that's in this agreement is representative and I'm not lying. I can be who I say I am. Well, we were an unsigned band, and we never trademarked the name or a copy. There's just no other band around that had that name. This is in 1995. There was no internet. I mean, you didn't really have these things in the same manner that you have them now, so you can discover things quickly. So when Roadrunner went, when we signed, and Roadrunner went through the process that they go through with all the bands of applying for copyrights and trademarks and getting things registered with the artist camp, they found out that in the music and entertainment, I believe that's the segment of the copyright, registrar. There's different industries you can register it for. And in our particular entertainment vertical, a studio in Chicago owned the trademark to the name Hinge. And because it was in the same category as a band, we couldn't have it. Unbeknownst to us, this person had been approached dozens of times in the past about sharing or buying the copyright and had no intention of doing it. I don't think Roadrunner helped us at all by going in and saying, hey, we have a new band that's got a record coming out in a month and we need your name. I think you pretty much are negotiating against yourself at that point. All the guy has to do is sit back and not return your call, and then your offer will invariably go up and go up. Now, we also had the unfortunate timing of this didn't make it to be a problem, and I won't say anybody, delayed it, but we didn't know that this was a concern until after they had pressed the initial run of CDs. So again, pre-digital age, when everything is based on product that needs to ship on a schedule to a retailer, did it financially, and all of a sudden you're like, I have to reprint everything. You begin a conversation it doesn't generally end well. And we thought we could go with a variant and call it Hinge AD. So Roadrunner said, okay, well, we'll just make AD stickers and we'll just sticker the shit out of these CDs, and that'll just be that. But that didn't float legally. It wasn't enough to enforce on a copyright if the guy took us to court. And at the same time, Roadrunner had just wrapped up their huge litigious multi-year lawsuit that Machine Head was going through with a studio in the UK. So there was a lot of foreshadowing at the time around is this a winnable war for us? Look at what we just went through with a much bigger band. I don't think we want to have this fight. Boys, change your name and come back to us in like an hour. So we, it was a process, but thankfully that name had actually been in our universe for some time. We just didn't think the band name. And when we moved into it, I think it felt like we had changed a little bit, but for the better, because we had been an unsigned band. Nobody cared about the name Hinge. Like, we weren't married to it. It's just what we called her. So Dry Kill Logic felt like something unique and ownable and new and exciting. I don't think Roadrunner felt that way, but we certainly felt that way.
But in the bottom of broken dreams, it's what it is, not what it seems. Shot for power, fucking
we touched on you guys did evolve, and depending on what album or even what song on which album people are listening to, people are going to put you in different categories, and label you in a different way. People have called you new metal, people have called you alternative metal, people have called you a bunch of different things. But is it just me, or in the later material, the newer material, we get a ton more hardcore influences than we got before from you guys? Is there some truth to that? Are there some it almost sounds like you feel like a teenager again with getting ready for these shows, and the excitement you're talking about kind of comes across as a teenage anxiety. Or sorry, not anxiety, but energy. Is there some youthful hardcore roots that are popping up?
I don't know if it's necessarily intentional, like we want to directionally think about that influential 90s, 2000s hardcore that we all love. But I think we evolve as musicians over time, and we start to think about the types of things that we've done and how we can grow and how we can expand. And, this new song, if you just isolate the bridge itself, we've never written, 4 or 5 part melodies before in note structures. And then we've never had such a slow breakdown like that before, with bass drops and all of these different elements. So the idea of kind of pushing ourselves and being the best versions of ourselves as musicians that we can be, I think, is something we're always very interested in. But I don't know if we know intentionally where that's going to land.
Right.
We're always like, let's write the next, 200 years or Dead Man's Eyes, or, let's just write that little hardcore banger that we've all loved. But it doesn't really get much more directional than that. Let's write a crazy one. Let's write a riffy one. Let's write a sick one, and that's just kind of where it starts. And then we all get to a place where the song is the song. And, we don't even know which one it is at that point by the time we're done. We just kind of do things the way that they occur. We're not well thought out.
You said a few times in previous answers about in those days, it was different, and label had to do this, and there was no internet, and we had to do that. I asked you earlier, was it scary, or was it how was that experience of playing these live shows again, or these massive shows? But being back is also you're back in this industry, but it's not really back. This industry has changed so dramatically, even in the last few years. The 2-3 years before COVID and the 2-3 years after COVID, this whole industry is completely different. Have there been some moments where you go oh, this is not what I'm used to, or this is different? Has there been a steep learning curve in these last a couple of years that were surprising?
I think the core principles of an artist's emotional connection with their audience and an audience's emotional connection with the artist, I think that remains. That's been there since people played flutes in the Hamlets back in the day, right? I think what has changed is how that art is commercialized to that audience. So many years ago, everything had a gatekeeper, everything had a process, everybody had somebody that stood in front of you that judged you before you got a chance to talk to your audience, which existed, but even though they existed, unless somebody else allowed you in, whether that was a radio format, a video format, an editorial outlet, any of those, a retailer, then there's different levels, right? You have a radio programmer, you have the video programmer, you have the buyer at the store. So all of these different locks, if you will, to get to the end, to the consumer. Well, today, everything's been democratized to the point where you can talk directly to them. You can have a conversation. You can ask them their opinions. They can give you their opinions, whether you didn't ask for it. There's this call and response that's very quick. And that part, C, is the most interesting part because we've never had access like that. We started at cassette tape. We ended at MySpace. This whole thing has never existed before. I think the learning curve is in, there's an app for that. There's a strat. You have to think about platform social content strategy, and you have to think about how to have a credit card into a merch scanner so that you can get the money back because everybody pays with a credit card and nobody's got $20 in their pocket. Like all of that type of stuff for us is, we're quick learners, but our context is very old. Our reference points very old. So I think that's the learning curve, is just how do bands exist in today's world? And there's so many great examples of success that really, I can only speak for myself, but I'm constantly amazed by when you see bands that really have a command of their creative, they have a command of their audience, a command of their business, command of their sound, and they know how to execute themselves. I think that's really like left brain, right brain material there. It's a hard line to walk, and I can appreciate when you see people doing it very well. So that's the part I think that I have the largest learning curve with, is just the processes, not the ideas or the work, but the way it gets done.
Remember my name. There's no one left to blame.
This is not going to be a one-off comeback with one song and a couple of shows. So, logical question then. Where is this going? What is the long-term plan at this point?
I think for us, we've got 2025 pretty well mapped out. We got this new song we're really happy about. We've got some amazing shows. We've got the shows next week that are headliners. We've got some tremendous festivals coming up to round out the year that we're going to be able to get back to these cities for the first time, these states in 20 years. You can just get to see people again and just be in the environment alongside some amazing talent. For us, man, the whole thing is just, living in the clouds, and we're so happy to be a part of it. But I think now this has also reignited the idea that we would like to create a body of work. I don't want to say an album. Sure, we want to make an album. I don't know if it all needs to come out at once the way you consider a traditional album format, but I think we need a body of work collectively in hand that we feel very confident about so that we can release it at the right pace for the audience. You want a couple every time we play some shows? We'll give you a couple every time you play some shows. You want a collection of six? We'll give it to you in 2 bunches. You want it all at once? You can have it all at once. I'm less married to the idea of format, but more married to the idea that we need to complete a body of work. Because I think we're ready to write more than just a handful here, a little bit there, finishes up. Like that was we really enjoyed the process of writing Now You Belong with the Dead. And as much as we enjoy playing shows and that part's been reignited, I think the idea of writing a full body of work has also been reignited too. So it's just exciting to think about this stuff for the first time in so long.
Yeah, it's clear that you've got plenty of energy, Cliff, with this whole project. It's exciting to see you guys back. I hope that we will get many more shows announced in the near future, and I think that will be the case. And then we'll see how this waterfall of releases will come our way as you guys are continuing to write. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it, and I hope to see you on the stage soon.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
Here to come in between the lines.
You are awesome for watching this video. Click right here to see more content like it and subscribe to the channel.